So these new Arathi humans, led by the Emperor Thoradin, very likely live in a place called Avaloren, and they're able to reach this land we can't actually reach ourselves through the power of the light. They still call themselves the Arathi Empire. They're light fanatics, incredibly powerful that wouldn't tolerate most of our races, literally the dream of the Scarlet Crusade. At the same time, the Scarlet Crusade recently started getting oddly powerful light abilities where they turned into beings of pure light, claiming that light will wipe our stain from the world. They had a base called Avalon, they're incredibly devoted to the light, and they had a sizable fleet. Furthermore, the northern eastern kingdoms is getting revamped, and they really set up the Scarlet Crusade and Dragonflight in what is really the pre-revamp stage. Could it be possibly through the power of the light that the Scarlet had established communications with Emperor Thoradin a few years back, and that they could be actual allies if the Emperor decides to take his original homeland back? Without a doubt, the best way to get into programming is with Boot.dev. This is essentially what programming would be like if it was an RPG game. You got everything from XP, levels, achievements, quests, but not in a gimmicky way. You're actually going to develop real-world skills that will translate into a full-on career where you can work from home if you really dedicate yourself to it. The whole idea is to write a ton of code right off the bat. Now, the team understands that not everyone can pay for a membership right now, therefore all the content is free to read and watch in guest mode. The paid membership unlocks the actual interactivity of the program. However, they're so confident you will love it that they have a free demo of every course and interactive features, as well as a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. So click the link in the description, check out what Boot.dev has to offer, use my code Doronsmovies to get 25% off your first payment. That's first month or first year, depending on the subscription you choose. Check out Boot.dev. By this point, everyone already knows about the Arathi humans. They're one of the most significant storylines of the new expansion. They put them in the trailer, they're obviously set up to be here for good, very likely for the entirety of the saga, and they're not just thematic allies and villains, like kobolds for example. They're obviously here to be a big part of the previous and the future storylines that are going to reveal some gaps that we didn't even know existed. So I made about 1,000 videos on them through the various developmental stages of the expansion, but I'm just going to give you a really quick overview of the facts that we had gotten. So based on the cipher document, we actually have information that their emperor is called Thoradin, very likely Thoradin the Ninth, and has been ruling the empire for at least 300 years. They are heavily light-based, very fanatical, but also significantly technologically advanced, robust, and powerful. I previously mentioned that the emperor is certainly not human, since he's a couple of centuries old, and that he could be actual light undead, because we just learned these Arathi priests are able to raise undead, and that it could play with the entire Kalia Manatil light undead storyline. However, what I did forget at that point in time is that elves also live for a really long time, so it's entirely possible that he's a half elf, half human, which gives him this type of an elongated lifespan. Now, what we also know is that the Empire is fanatical and they're very light devoted, and they have a bit of a different form of the light that they used. Now, the Emperor himself got a vision around the time of Cataclysm of the final battle between the light and the void called Ranilash, and he sent an expedition to Ranilash. What is even more interesting that a lot of people are skipping over is that Velen also got that vision at the exact same time on a completely different part of Azeroth, and that is when we learned of the Anduin leading the Army of the Light in what we thought was a distant future. It is also very likely that this is the exact same vision that Zera had back in Legion, and how she wanted to recruit Illidan, and how the battle against the Burning Legion was relevant in the long term. And it does seem like she was actually right, especially as Illidan is confirmed to actually return in the World Soul Saga. So from this perspective, the entire Legion storyline was really just one small stepping stone. It wasn't really the final battle of World of Warcraft. Now, the Emperor, unlike Velen, who tried to consolidate his people, sent a pretty large expedition to fight in this battle called Ranilash, and they ended up reaching this place called Kazlagar, and they had settled right around Beledar, which they call the Emperor's Vision. Settled is a bit of an understatement, as they had essentially crash-landed in this zone, lost quite a lot of people, and pretty much all the mages that were supposed to actually connect them to the mainland. The thing is though, it does seem like all of this was the Emperor's actual vision, because we got a few documents and he envisioned the battle between the Nerubians, the Harbingers, so it's very likely all of this was a part of his plan. Now, Before I bore you too much with the lore you probably already know, let me just explain how this could realistically be connected to the Scarlet Crusade and why it could turn out to be a really interesting storyline in the near future, despite, I know, this sounding super tinfoil hat based. A big part of it comes to the light and their technology. The biggest hint right now is that this massive light empire is on Avaloren, which could be a continent potentially west of Kalimdor. We don't really know the exact location, but certainly the beyond the storming sea. Apparently there is a place that the Titans didn't want us to know about and that it can be reached by conventional means, and it is likely these crazy half elves have managed to reach this place through magic and their light-powered airships. This is why we never heard of them before or interacted with them, because we didn't have the technology to access it that they've had for quite a long time. Think of it like Pandaria being still beyond the mist, but some light guys managed to actually bypass it with their light technology and to actually settle there. Now, hear me out. There is an interesting number of oddly similar parallels with the Scarlet Crusade and these guys. First, most obvious one is that their base of operations of the Scarlet Crusade was Avalon, which is oddly similar in name to the name Avaloren, which could be a continent where the Arathi are. Oddly enough, Avalon is essentially a port right on the edge of the Eastern Kingdoms. Second is that the Scarlets had a surprisingly well-developed fleet that they managed to create a gigantic port in Northrend and to carry the entire expedition, so they could have reached other places. However, the most important thing is that they might have managed to establish the connection through their desperation with the light after Lordaeron fell. See, while the Scarlets are still painted as the brain-dead NPCs that are just black and white, they're not actually originally evil. Most of their evil side was manipulated through the Dreadlords. They're essentially an order of paladins that fanatically embraced the light in order to battle the undead scourge, and they just wanted to wipe everyone out. It is entirely possible that through their completely fanatical view of the light, they somehow managed to get in touch with the light Arathi. First of all, the light has this weird way of communications. It's very likely that Emperor Thoradin and Velen got the same vision. It's likely around this time the Scarlets also got the vision and therefore learned about the light Arathi Empire. Imagine their face when they found out that there is a gigantic Arathi light-based empire that is very powerful and that could actually help them in their efforts and that could restore the glory to the humans. Literally sounds like a Scarlet Crusade dream. Now, check this out. Based on the documents from Kazakar, we're learning that these Arathi light humans actually only call themselves the Arathi Empire. They still consider themselves the original heir to the Arathi Empire, and based on the info, not even an heir, they just consider themselves to be the continuation of the Arathi Empire. Now, let's turn back to the Scarlets and some recent updates that oddly enough happened. First of all, the Scarlets have been surprisingly powerful all these years, being able to launch a massive attack on Undercity despite being entirely destroyed for years, and they did this in Dragonflight. However, if you might remember, in Gilneas, they started getting these very strange abilities where one of them had turned into a gigantic light monstrosity and told us that the light will purge our stain from the world. I don't know about you, but I know that the Scarlets weren't able to do this in the past. Interesting enough, you're finding similar monstrosities with the Arathi humans and everything that is happening in Kazakar as well. Now, check out the biggest hint. So, do you remember those BFA pamphlets that the Scarlet Crusade started dropping everywhere? While there was a bunch of gibberish, they told us that Anduin is a false king, and in a document titled The Last Manatil, they say they have an heir. They say Princess Kalia wed a nobleman of the Arathi bloodline. Keep in mind, they put Arathi in full caps. Now, I don't necessarily think this is the child of Kalia Manatil they're referring to. I think this is just a way for them to create legitimacy, as the Manatils are considered the legitimate rulers of Lordaeron. However, it is definitely odd that they state that this person is of the Arathi bloodline. Most humans are obviously of Arathi heritage, pretty much all the humans, but these Arathi Empire humans are not just Arathi heritage, they're literally still called the Arathi Empire, they're still called Arathi humans. One of their characters is literally called Farin Lothar, which is oddly similar to Andin Lothar, and we still haven't really gotten an explanation what exactly happened there. I do obviously think they're lying here. Kalia would know whether she had a child, but I think they could be trying to plan something. Do you think it's interesting that Blizzard did a little bit of a pre-revamp setup in Dragonflight where they cleared Undercity and Gilneas, which are going to be probably the big zones for Midnight? They significantly featured the Scarlet Crusade and showed us that they had really devoted themselves to the fanatical light with these light monstrosities. Could this really be a setup for what is to happen later. All the current hints from Kazakar are pointing to the direction that Thoradin and his Light Empire might not really be the good guys, or at least could be very fanatical. It seems like they would not like our playable races and would not tolerate most of the company we keep around, which is pretty much exactly what the Scarlet Crusade does. I do feel like we'll actually see these humans soon, and that there might be a split in the factions where one side will ally with us, potentially against the Emperor. However, seeing that these Arathi light humans consider themselves the Arathi, they would have an interest to reclaim their original homeland, especially as the Void is invading their original homeland, and this could potentially be the Battle of Ranglash. I feel like the Emperor might send a full force, not just an expedition, to the Eastern Kingdoms in midnight. It is entirely possible that they could be linking up with the Scarlet Crusade and that the Scarlets may have been working with them all these years without us even knowing anything. Remember, we don't know where these Arathi humans are. It's possible that west of Kalimdor, the logo of the war within hints that, but it could also be off the shore of the Eastern Kingdoms. It's possible that the east of Eastern Kingdoms leads to the west of Kalimdor. Seeing that Azeroth is a globe, it's very likely that this is the case. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the Light Arathi are going to be our new biggest enemy ever, but I do think we could have a big problem with them. We could be seeing something like the Siege of Orgrimmar type civil war in their midst, where the Light Fanatics with the Emperor might try to reclaim the Eastern Kingdoms. Of course, still too early to speculate anything with certainty, but you gotta admit there is an odd number of parallels between the Scarlets and these Arathi humans. Thank you for watching, and check out how the Titan Gold for Azeroth was actually revealed by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Slavic mythology and the god Perun by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.